And now, CBC presents In the Spotlight. For the next half hour, we look at a current affairs issue of national, regional and international significance which affects daily life in Barbados.
Hello, good morning and welcome to another edition of In the Spotlight with me, your host, Ken Jerson. Today we take a closer look at the Barbados Secondary Teachers Union, which just had its elections for a new executive council. We'll discuss the election itself, the union's priorities and perceived challenges going forward. Joining us for that discussion is newly returned President of the BSTU, Ms. Mary-Anne Redman.
Good morning.
She's also joined by Mr. Carson Greenwich, the BSTU's Public Relations Officer.
Hello Kent, hello Barbados.
And also the Reverend Charles Morris, who is the BSTU's first Vice President.
Good morning.
Welcome to you all, and first congratulations to all of you and all members of the Executive Council for being successful in the election.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Now, the point has been made that for the first time, all 8 seats on the council were challenged. And there have been rumblings about the level of dissatisfaction about the way the union has been led in recent years. Is that something you, Ms. Redman, intend to work on, or do you believe it's much ado about nothing?
I can't say to any large extent that there have been rumblings in relation to how the union has been run. As you know, we had some issues that resulted in the resignation of some officers in October. And those officers came back as a team to challenge the existing officers. And so that is why there was actually a challenge of every position. And that is something that we've never been accustomed to. Normally it is just a matter of 1 or 2 positions that might be challenged or that might have to be filled because the persons in them previously had decided not to continue in that particular capacity.
Okay, now you mentioned that you're not so, you wouldn't say that there have been so much rumblings, but for example, we had the former BSTU General Secretary Andrew Brathwaite who contested the presidency, and he was saying that there needs to be a greater focus on the well-being of the members beyond those matters that involve the Ministry of Education.
I believe that the well-being of the members overall needs to be taken into consideration, and we need to look in that direction a little bit more. I think there is more to be involved in the union than the focus on the matters at the level of the ministry and those types of things as well. I think the general membership also has concerns outside of that needs to be addressed.
How do you respond to that?
What I heard and saw, he didn't say the well-being of members beyond the matters at the ministry. What I understood was that he was talking about the well-being of members as opposed to the matters at the ministry. I don't know if my understanding was correct. Now, the matters at the ministry directly refer to the well-being of members, and therefore to that extent in my mind there was some measure of contradiction. That was how I interpreted what I saw and heard.
Okay.
Now, there are so many outstanding matters that the ministry has not addressed, and those for us are priority areas as we move forward. We have been operating in an environment where there is an open and known anti-union sentiment. And this is something that is not being experienced only at the level of the BSTU, but you would have heard the BUT, the NUPW speak of, and even the BWU, because they too represent public officers and public employees. And you would have heard them speak of the general anti-union sentiment in the country.
How are you going to overcome that? and still achieve the objectives that you want to fulfill for the betterment of your members?
Well, in overcoming that, there are a variety of approaches that we have to use. And an approach that we must use is greater sensitization of the worker in the workplace, his or her role as a member of a union, and for them to understand the importance of identification with the union and the principles of the union, for them to understand that it is their individual responsibility as a worker to the union that they are part of to come out and show immediate and committed support to the union that they are part of. Workers cannot allow employers in this type of environment in which we are trying to operate to browbeat them and cause them to lose the rights that already exist, either in the law or through customer practice. Because employers are demonstrating more and more that they are about not fulfilling those rights to workers. And we can only have what has been fought for and won already upheld through the strength of each individual worker acting in unity.
Okay.
And that is how we are going to fight.
All right. From the workers' perspective, based on what you've been hearing from your membership, what is the most pressing issue at this time?
From the workers' perspective, having all of the outstanding issues resolved, because those issues range from appointments to unfair dismissal, because you know that our membership, and I have to stop using the word teachers when I refer to membership, and I'm going to start using the term education workers. And that will include the range of people that we represent, because we represent teachers, we represent secretaries, we represent the ground staff, all the ancillary staff, librarians, lab technicians, and therefore I am going to begin to use the term education work. If I slip back into teacher, you will forgive me. But we have to, as workers, as union leaders, make sure that our education workers understand their roles as members of trade unions, and to understand that what they do in relation to support of their union is very, very important.
You mentioned appointments.
Yes, sorry.
I
I was talking about the range of matters that affect our members. They range from appointments, they range to problems of environmental issues, they range to problems of violence in schools, they range to the whole issue of compensation of school-based assessment and the increased workload that CXC has placed on teachers with the introduction of CVQs and the CCSLC, all of which have some measure of SBA component to them.
Now, those issues in particular, those three that you mentioned there, are issues that we want to delve into a bit more. So let's start with, for example, appointments. Where exactly are we with those? What's the latest?
Well, we definitely entered into a program of ensuring within our schools that persons who had been acting for a period of time would be recommended for appointment. And therefore we had asked our shop stewards in individual schools to make a list of all of those persons. And what we did, both at the level of our reps on the boards of management, who would be the CTUSAB reps, we asked them to apply pressure to the boards to have interviews done. In some cases, we wrote to the chairpersons of the school, the boards of management, and asked that interviews be done so that these persons can be appointed. And so that has been happening. But we have gotten reports about the transparency in some instances of the process, where, for example, it is a statutory responsibility of the head of department to be engaged in recruitment and selection of persons within their department. And in some instances, those persons were not included in the interview panel. And where we have found out that that has happened, we have had to write to the ministry and ask that any recommendations coming as a result of those interviews, reaching the ministry as a result, be discarded and the whole process done over again.
Have they accepted and agreed with that?
Yes, it has happened at some schools.
Okay. I probably want to bring in Reverend Morris on this one. Let's talk about.
He can speak directly to this.
I wanted to shift slightly to violence in schools, and specifically, what is the BSTU doing as an organization to help to make the teaching environment more a safer place for all concerned?
Well, if you check the record of the BSTU on this issue, you would see that we have been out there, out front, calling on the ministry to examine this issue. We have said that we would have liked to have maybe a situation where we can examine this issue thoroughly, and that has not happened. We want to look at the causes. It doesn't make sense coming with solutions before you look at the causes. Rather than trying to say, well, these are the last days and these things are going to happen, I think that we need if I was the Minister of Education, or even the Permanent Secretary, or even the Chief Education Officer, I would have called out some of my staff, members of the teaching corps. I would have set up maybe what would be some commission, even if to investigate, first of all, the causes of this thing. And you will probably find that there are varied causes. They're varied and various. And therefore, we have been going this line. We have been asking for
Committee.
the committee, and this committee has been, every time we talk about something flares ahead, or the committee will be appointed tomorrow, it will be appointed next week, not next week. Then 3 or 4 years hence, I mean, that may be an exaggeration, but 2 years hence, we still do not have that committee. And all we're getting is talk.
So the question then is, in the meantime, what is and can BSTU doing about this particular issue? Let me get Mr. Greenwich's thoughts on this.
First of all, Kent, let me thank you on behalf of the members of the BSTU for this opportunity. We value it. To your question directly, what are we doing? Madam President spoke about sensitization. That is important. We as a union have recognized that we cannot wait until an act of violence has been perpetrated on any member or any worker within a school before we do something. We have, let's go back to our AGM recently. The featured presentation of that AGM was dealing with violence in schools. That was not only a response to what has been happening over the past term and past months, but certainly a proactive measure. And that was led by CEO of Pre-Emergency Inc., Mr. of Canada, of Dean DeMonte, where he would have identified particular strategies which teachers can employ when dealing with an act of violence, for example, gun violence. And not only did it link to gun violence, but any form of violence. What is it, or how is it that a teacher or a worker within a school can respond if you're faced with a gunman? Again, we're speaking about being proactive. We're not burying our heads in the sand and behaving as if there's not the possibility of our schools being attacked by that type of violence. That was one of the areas focused on what is it that, or how is it teachers can respond. You secure yourself, secure your students. You, first of all, need to determine if you are hearing something that doesn't sound normal. Don't take it for granted. Be aware of your environment. And having been aware of your environment, understand how to respond if someone barges into your class.
You run, hide, or
You run,
fight.
hide, or fight.
Yeah.
So that was one way, is one way in which we have tackled the issue of violence in schools. Further to that, we are constantly educating and sensitizing our members to the reality. What is it, or how is it we should respond if an act of violence is visited upon us by a student? We have a zero tolerance for violence in schools. Our record as a union has demonstrated that. Our position on that was very much the same. Two recent cases we've had, student and teacher violence. There's no way that the environment, the working environment, should be compromised by any student who exhibits violent acts towards any member of staff.
Okay. I've heard people ask this question, so maybe I can get an answer from one of you now. In situations of violent confrontations involving students, is it your advice that the teachers intervene? What should their response be in those circumstances?
Teachers have really duty of care of the students that they have responsibility for at any point in time. And that can range from your classroom, if when you're in there, to walking across the schoolyard, to at any point in time during the school day. As a matter of fact, there is some discussion in law as to what time that extends to, if off the school premises as well. And there has been case law that states that teachers do have responsibility for their charges off the school premises too. And the thing that it is so difficult now, and it is something that tears at the heart and spirit of teachers, because you have responsibility for your charges, and that is foremost in your mind constantly. There is an act of violence being committed. The instinctive thing is to try to protect your students. So teachers now go into a fight situation to try and part it and get hurt. Or if the teacher then has to be assertive physically to part the fight, then you put yourself at risk of them being charged with assault and battery.
So what is your advice?
So our advice is simply to try to assess the situation and see through assessment if you are able to realistically diffuse. And if you can, then definitely do so. If you cannot, seek help immediately to get that situation responded to in the most effective way without endangering yourself or other persons around.
Okay. Do you embrace the view that it is part of a teacher's duty in protecting their charges to, if warranted, search students?
Well, the law does allow for searches to take place. It is definitely there. It is just that it specifies the manner in which it should happen. Now, a female teacher can search both males and females, but the male cannot. The male must have another male to search a male. You should not do it alone. There should always be another colleague with you. And so you should not engage in the searching process alone. And with the searching of males, as I said, it can be a male and a female. With a female, it should be, a female should always be there. And of course, that is the situation.
All right, I want to turn our attention to school-based assessment, where I think the BSTU's position is well known on this. We believe that teachers should be compensated for it. Has there been any movement on that one?
Well, not from the ministry's side, but certainly, and you understand that that is already manned based on the fact that the SBA is in fact part of the CXC exam, and CXC pays persons to correct the other two areas of the exam. The SBA is a third area, and CXC there is already in place compensation in some subject areas. So we are saying that there should be equality and there should be compensation in all. That is our stand. It is CXC's exam, pay for the whole exam. There are no statutory requirements for any teacher in this country to engage free of cost in the correction of an examination that is set and moderated and controlled by an external examining body.
But have you made any progress?
No, I'm talking about progress. At the level of the ministry, no. But I would say that we have made progress because the BSTU initiated this stance from 2006. And we did so at the level of the Caribbean Union of Teachers. And this year, I don't know if you're aware, that TUTA, which is the Trinidad and Tobago Unified Teachers Association, they are seeking legal advice as to whether the correction of those papers does constitute a statutory responsibility for them. In the meantime, while they have been doing this, the whole issue of SBAs now, added SBAs now, in the subject areas of English and math has come into being. And what they did this year was to advise their members not to correct the English and maths SBAs. So they're not correcting in Trinidad. To the best of my understanding, based on newspaper reports, they're not correcting English and maths SBAs. In Jamaica, again, based on newspaper reports, we understand that students are being asked to pay a fee to the school, and the school is in turn taking that fee and compensating teachers. Now, I don't agree with that because I don't think that beyond the registration for the exam, that financial responsibility should fall on the students. CXC has been making some good profits through the years, and it is their business to use those profits to pay teachers in the region for the SBAs. In St. Vincent as well, there's a move in that direction. And they passed a resolution at last year's AGM that they would not be correcting. They have tried to get meetings with, I was in contact with WhatsApp with the president, and he said they'd had a meeting, I think, with their education council, if I'm correct, and they agreed in principle. But getting meetings with the ministry on it has been difficult, and they just had elections, I think, Tuesday, and the new executive has been mandated to continue in this regard. So we have made progress, because if we can get it done at the regional level, then it will work to our benefit.
In the meantime, what is the advice to teachers?
No, that the members, that we continue in the same vein. We do what we, and there's nothing, I want to make it very clear, that there's nothing that we do or have done during this process that can or will jeopardize the student's success in any subject area. We are very aware that the structure of the SBA allows for the teacher directly, in some instances, to have to supervise certain aspects of the SBA. And in those areas, we have told our members yes, and they've understood that and they've done that. They have supervised, and those marks are sent, but not the other marks that can be corrected by others.
Okay, I want to turn.
As a matter of fact, we teach the SBA as we teach a normal subject in the school. I think this is what the public does not understand. It is not that we're not teaching the SBA or supervising. We teach the different aspects of it.
And assist students.
And the students are marked during the year as we do other topics, other subjects. We teach them and we mark them and we set tests. We do all these things with the SBA. We don't mark the final paper in the school, paper 1 or 2 or whatever it is. We are saying, look, this SBA holds the same line. We teach, you mark, or you pay for the marking. I think the other thing that has to be mentioned too is the disrespect or the disrespectful manner in which this has been dealt with by the ministry. Imagine that they asked for a legal opinion, they asked for the Solicitor General's opinion, and all that we came back was a 1.5 line response.
No supporting documentation.
Nothing to support.
Opinion was based. It was given like a personal opinion.
Yeah. All the teachers are something to mark SBA full stop, nothing else. Now that to me is not only an insult, but if I had an attorney that would do that kind of thing to me, I would fire the attorney immediately.
I want to turn your attention to environmental matters. First of all, we don't have much time left, so just identify for me some of the environmental issues you've been dealing with as a union and what you've been doing to try and resolve, rectify them.
Safety and health. One of the things that we have done as a union too is to try to get the safety and health committees, as is mandated in the Safety and Health at Work Act, up and running in the schools, because they were not at many schools. Up to now, fire drills are not done in every school, and that is something that from next term we are going to be making sure that our shop stewards advocate and have implemented in every school at least a fire drill. Okay? That is linked to safety and health, which is linked to environmental issues. The environmental issues that we are generally faced with in schools revolve around mold. There's a lot of mold in schools. There is incorrect, sometimes, how should I phrase it?
Improper ventilation.
Improper ventilation. Inappropriate markings, so that your sewer system, you don't know exactly. You see a cover over something. You don't know if it is a septic tank, if it is a grease trap, there are different systems for collection of various types of material. That is never properly demarcated. That is something that we have started to request in some schools. Toilet facilities and the maintenance of sewer systems. Combermere was a nightmare.
You said was. Are you satisfied that all is well there now?
Well, you can ask the Reverend that, but our reports have not been, they have continued, but they have not continued, I should say, the frequency or severity of episodes as previously.
Okay, I think that's probably all the time we have for today. Unfortunately, I'm sure there's so much more we can discuss. But I want to thank you all for coming for today's discussion. Of course, President of the BSTU, Ms. Mary-Anne Redman. We also had Mr. Carson Greenwich, the Public Relations Officer, and Reverend Charles Morris, first Vice President. All the best to you going forward as the new executive. We wish you much success. And thank you too to our listeners for joining us for another edition of In the Spotlight. I'm your host, Kent Jerson, signing off and wishing you a great day ahead.
You've been listening to In the Spotlight, a searching look at an issue of local, regional and international importance to Barbados.
Oh Lord, that's what it is. You see, we didn't even touch the fact that the border management, they want training.
Yeah.
They don't know, they don't have a clue
not a claw.
That's what's going on.
But maybe that is something that union and unions collectively can advocate for. That
We have done
For
that.
how many years?
promoted or
How many years?
they're given the
Kate?
jobs that they go through
How
some
many? It
level
has to
of
go. It
basic
has to be
training.
beyond just political affiliation. A yard foulism.
Sometimes they make some of the most
Choices.
obvious blunders.
And they move to break the back to you.
But we can have a separate interview.
Oh,
If they want. The camera is here.
and trust me,